If I had to explain this story in the clearest possible way, I would say this. Donald Trump is not only losing support, he's entering a succession crisis inside his own coalition. That is the deeper meaning of what is happening here. A lot of people still imagine that political collapse begins when the leader is formally challenged. That is not how it usually works in a movement like MAGA. In a movement like MAGA, collapse begins when different tribes start imagining life after the leader before anyone says the words out loud. That is what I think this source is really showing. The source is not only about Marjorie Taylor Greene attacking Trump over Iran. It is about Greene creating a rhetorical pathway out of Trumpism and back into a looser category she calls America. First, that is a critical distinction. She is not simply saying Trump failed. She is saying the movement must survive Trump. She is telling people to leave MAGA, stop following Trump, and return to something she presents as more authentic and more permanent than he is. Faye file site Faye turn 28, file 0 Faye. That is not ordinary rebellion. That is post-leader language. And once that language enters the bloodstream of a populist coalition, everybody starts recalculating who owns the future, who owns the myth, who gets to inherit the emotional energies that once flowed automatically to the leader. That is the frame I want to use here. Because what makes this source so important is not that one congresswoman is mad. It is that multiple right-wing subcultures are now producing the raw material out of which a post-Trump right could be built. The war in Iran is acting like the trigger, but the deeper process is succession. Let us break that down. First, Greene herself is performing the role of the inheritor of betrayed populism. She is not a generic critic. She is trying to sound like the conscience of the original promise. The source shows her saying she wanted Trump to put America first, and that instead she heard only war, war, war. She lists all the domestic promises displaced by war, debt, Social Security, insurance, jobs affordability, children, America's future. That list is doing more than criticizing policy. It is reconstructing the lost covenant between the movement and its voters. Faye file site Faye turn 28 file 0. Faye, that is step 1 in a succession environment. Someone begins narrating the movement. S original innocence. Step 2 is that other subcultures begin validating the feeling, even if not under the same banner. The source shows exactly that. Benny Johnson attacking Bondi and the Epstein handling. Young male online right voices turning war spending into a direct insult against affordability and domestic life. Megyn Kelly warning about losing the restrainer wing. Alex Jones talking as though Trump has spiritually or psychologically gone astray. These are different ecosystems with different styles and often different agendas. Yet the source shows them all converging emotionally around one conclusion. Trump is no longer delivering the thing we followed him for. Faye file site Faye turn 28, file 0 Faye. That is how succession psychology starts, not through unity, through overlap. The factions do not need to agree on the successor. They only need to agree that the leader has become a burden. Now, let me say something important. This is especially dangerous for Trump because his coalition was never a normal coalition. It was a bundle of grievances bound to one personality. That kind of coalition can look incredibly strong as long as the personality remains the trusted container of the grievances. But once he stops being the trusted container, the grievances do not disappear. They begin looking for new containers. That is what I think this source shows in real time. One faction says he betrayed anti-war nationalism. One says he betrayed affordability. One says he betrayed anti-elite, anti-pedo justice. One says he betrayed the anti-neocon logic. One says he betrayed younger men's economic future. One says Fox is now betraying the truth on his behalf. That is not one problem. That is a leadership succession atmosphere. Because each faction is now holding onto its grievance while loosening its attachment to the man. And once enough factions do that simultaneously, the leader becomes replaceable in the imagination before he becomes replaceable in structure. That is the real moment of danger. This is why I think the source S generational angle matters so much. Greene says boomers are being brainwashed by Fox while younger generations want affordability, jobs, and domestic focus. Instead of more war, that is not only a media attack, it is a future claim. She is implying that the younger, less corrupted, less hypnotized segment of the movement represents the real tomorrow, while the older media, discipline base, represents inertia. Faye site Faye turn 28, file 0 Faye, that is classic succession rhetoric. It says the old court is compromised. The future court is still available. Whoever captures that future court can inherit the movement. Now, who might that be? The source does not name a single successor. And that is part of why it is so interesting. This is not yet about one person taking the throne, it is about the throne becoming imaginable as empty. That is the first step. Green's role is to say the throne no longer belongs automatically to Trump. Megyn Kelly's role is to give legitimacy to the idea that the restrainer national security lane is breaking loose, the manosphere and younger, online. Right role is to make the emotional withdrawal noisy and contagious. The Epstein wing's role is to moralize the betrayal. Alex Jones' role is to spiritualize the betrayal. Fox's role, ironically, is to reveal itself as part of the old protection system that must be overcome if the movement is to become authentic. Again, that is why I say this is succession language, even though no one says successor outright. Everything in the source points in that direction. Now let us talk about why Iran is the issue that triggered this. Because Iran is the perfect stress test of Trump's myth. A Trump-style coalition can survive many contradictions if it still believes one thing, that Trump stands outside the permanent war machine. The minute he begins to look like just another manager of foreign war, he loses the special status that allowed different tribes to forgive everything else. That is why Iran is not just another policy dispute, it is the myth breaker. If Trump can be dragged into another big Middle East war, then the anti-war nationalist, anti-neocon, anti-elite, affordability, first mythology starts collapsing all at once. The source understands that very well. That is why Green says this is not what the American people voted for. That is why she says there is literally no scenario Republicans win the midterms if this continues. That is why she says she refuses to support it. Those are not casual lines. They are lines meant to move followers from disappointment to disinheritance. Fay-Felicite Fay-Turn 2850 Fay disinheritance is the key word here. Trump is not being told do better. He is being told you no longer deserve automatic inheritance over the movement. Energy. That is much more serious. Now, let me go one level deeper. Succession struggles in populist movements are rarely clean because the movement is not an institution first. It is a narrative first. That means the real fight is always over narrative inheritance. Who is the true keeper of America first? Who is the true anti-war voice? Who is the true enemy of the Epstein class? Who is the true enemy of Fox propaganda? Who is the true representative of young people who want affordability rather than empire? The source shows Green trying to gather all those answers toward herself, or at least toward a post-Trump zone of legitimacy. Fay-Felicite Fay-Turn 2850 Fay, and the more other tribes echo pieces of that, the more the zone expands. This is why Trump's normal immune system may fail here. He can crush party officials. He can humiliate donors. He can mock mainstream media. He can terrorize Republican office holders who still need his endorsement. But can he stop the movement from mentally rehearsing a world beyond him? That is harder, because once imagination moves, discipline decays. And this source is full of imagination moving. The war is being reframed as the proof that Trump has become the thing he once promised to destroy. If that frame holds, then people do not just leave on policy grounds. They leave with moral excitement. They leave believing they are recovering the movement from contamination. That is how succession becomes cleansing. And cleansing is powerful. It creates energy. It creates belonging. It creates the thrill of refounding. That is what Green may be trying to ignite. So if I had to reduce the entire source to one sentence, I would say this. The real danger for Trump is not only that the Iran war made MAGA angry. It is that the war may be teaching MAGA's different tribes to imagine America first without Trump at the center of it. And once that imagination becomes normal, the succession crisis has already begun.